I'm very happy to say welcome back to ModCon 2022, and I am joined here by Chief Fleet Command Jim Johnson, and below us on the screen, but we're incredibly happy they're here, Aaron Polyea. I hope I've pronounced that right, Aaron.
Polyea.
Polyea. See, all the things I was correcting in the middle of in between sessions, I could have checked that. Didn't I? Did I? Right,
it's okay.
And Thomas Marrone. That's right.
Marrone, but
Marrone.
Yeah. That's okay. That's how I screen for telemarketers.
It's yeah. I mean, I get the same thing, but as a result, I know how much it hurts inside, so I apologise.
Okay.
Would you guys like to just introduce yourself briefly and say what you do, why you're here? That would be amazing. Starting with Jim.
Sure thing. My name is Jim Johnson. I'm the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game, published by Modiphius Entertainment. And I am here because I brought Aaron and Thomas in to help support the development of the Utopia Planitia book. So I'll kick it over to Aaron.
I'm Aaron Polyea. I'm a freelance writer for Modiphius and Star Trek Adventures. I'm kind of the science, technology, and starships guy.
And Thomas, tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Marrone. I'm the associate art director for Star Trek Online. I've been working at Cryptic Studios and Star Trek Online for over a decade now, and I've designed and modeled several ships that actually ended up showing up in Star Trek Picard, and then was able to contribute the lore for those ships for the Utopia Planitia book.
Amazing. So yeah, we are, as mentioned. There you go, Utopia Planitia, the long-awaited, fantastic ship book, basically. It's one of those things where, and I was saying to the guys before we started, it feels like kind of when you do a Star Trek, when you license Star Trek, you know, from day one, we were being asked, so ship book, ? And it's what? How old is Star Trek Adventures now? It's like what, 4 or 5 years?
Let's see. We started in 2016. The first year was mostly just development, right? And then the game came out in 2017.
Yeah.
So it's 6 years. We're heading into year 6 now. I think.
Year 6, and it's kind of like, I think kind of the expectation is that this would be first out the gate. Really, this would happen really early, but it's kind of therefore been on, I think, a lot of people's wish lists, both in and outside the company, like going, I can't wait till there's a spaceship book. So I think a good place to start is what was your desire going into this book? What did you want to do? Presumably, like, you know, other than just list cool ships, what was the plan?
Yeah, I think so. You know, we did the core book, you know, way back in 2017, whatever. And one of the major supplements coming out after that was the command source book. And if I remember the details right, it's been a while, but I think Aaron and Nathan had a lot of starships already written that we couldn't fit into the core book. And we were like, okay, we've got all this great material. We need to do something with it. Obviously, we need to put it in another supplement. And we knew the command source book was coming up. And I was the lead writer on that one. And I knew, like, okay, we're going to put as many starships into command source book as we can. Because we knew that, A, we weren't able to fit them all into the core book. And there was a lot of, you know, very well-known popular space frames that fans wanted. And I knew that there wasn't a dedicated Starships book on the schedule anytime soon in the early years of the line. And so we made sure to fit what we could into the command book. I remember having conversations with Aaron about how, you know, let's pack this as full of small craft as we could. I think we tried to get every shuttle type in there, you know, every small craft shuttle type. I think we missed a couple ultimately, but we did try to throw in as many space frames and small craft. And in the back of my mind, I was hoping that we would get to do a full-blown, you know, ship book at some point. And you know, the schedule proceeded as it did, and then things happened, and COVID happened, and finally we found a place in the schedule. We were like, okay, now we can do it. And now here it is. And I'm really, I'm a little sad that it took, you know, 5.5 years for it to happen, but
it's the sweeter, you know, for the wait, though. That's you know,
I think it's worth it.
Definitely. And so what was Aaron and then Thomas? What was your involvement exactly in this book, putting this together? Then,
Well, like Jim said, it kind of started right around the command source book. That hey, I was putting together a whole bunch of these starships, and a lot more starships than I actually got into the command book, just because
Yeah.
hey, that's how it is, page counts. And then it was like, okay, we need to have a dedicated fleet book. So I pitched
Right.
this idea for a fleet book, and it morphed into this over the years. And my what I really wanted to do was help produce a book that it wasn't just a list of starships and stats. I never wanted that. I didn't think that would be a good idea. Yes, a lot of players want to be able to build ships and have those stats, but it was also about making sure that there was a story in every single ship, that there were nuggets of stories in every little ship system or talent. Star Trek's about telling good stories, so that should be the thrust of it. And yeah, anyway, that's what I tried to do.
Nice. Yeah, well, I come at it mainly from the art perspective. I was able to provide Jim with a lot of art for the Discovery source book, Discovery Year 1 and Year 2 source book. And, when we basically, we've been, Star Trek Online has been around for 12 years, and we've been, over the last few years, we've really been kind of upping the quality bar of our ship models in game to the point where they, traditionally real-time assets, you can build a really complicated, fancy model for like CG for rendering out for TVs and film, and that's at a certain quality level. And then the models that you make for video games are much lower detail. But real-time, because computers are getting more powerful and game consoles are getting more powerful, real-time models are kind of starting to catch up. And so we've been over the last few years, especially, we've been rebuilding a lot of STO's assets to the point where you can just give renders of those models to people like Jim and feature them in a book, and they still hold up next to art by geniuses like Tobias Richter, who I know did the cover for this book. So I know Jim needed a lot of internal art, and we were able to provide a lot of that for the Discovery book. And so when it was time to start doing the ship book, he reached out to me, and I combed through all of the ships that we have, and Star Trek Online has a vast catalog of over 600 Star Trek ships. And some of them canon, and some of them are not canon. They're ships that we made for the game. And for people who don't know, probably everybody watching knows, but canon simply means appeared in a film or a movie, right, or in a TV show. So we have the canon ships, but we also have ships that we developed specifically for Star Trek Online, for Star Trek Online setting, which is 10 years after Star Trek Picard. So Starfleet's evolved a little bit. It's a little more futuristic. It has its own visual style. And in talking with Jim, I really wanted to not just provide the canon assets, but also see if we could get some specific ships from Star Trek Online into the book to kind of broaden our footprint, Star Trek Online's cultural footprint in the Star Trek universe. And then, of course, luckily, it became really easy to choose which of those ships we would include because they appeared in Star Trek Picard. And that's a whole other story. But we were able to include some of those Picard ships in the book because now they transition from being from the game to being canon, right? And so it was really a great thrill to be able to give that to Modiphius and have them included in the book and write some lore and contribute on the stats to those as well.
Yeah, we're getting some people in chat sort of shouting at different classes like Gagarin and Odyssey. Is there? I mean, should we dive into the book? Is there any one particular one that you can think of? Like, I'm glad that one made the jump.
Yeah, well, why don't we keep on this theme, and can you jump to the STO ships? I think that's probably like page 209, 210, somewhere in that range. Steve, if you can pull that up. I think it was just like super. We got so lucky on this book, just the way that it timed out. Is that we were in the middle of developing the manuscript when we were aligning everything with Thomas, and initially I asked Thomas, why don't you pick your 5 or 6 favorite ships from STO that are like fan favorites and stuff that we can drop in, and me not having any idea that they were going to be in Picard, right? And so like I knew we were going to have 205, 206 somewhere in there. But anyway, I knew we were going to have a handful of STO ships, but what I didn't know until much later in the development process is that they were actually going to be on Picard. In fact, I didn't know. I didn't know until I watched the first episode of season 2, and I was like, "What the heck? What is that?" And then Thomas revealed all the good news. And stuff. This is even better than we could have even imagined, because not only are they, because at the time we thought they were going to be beta canon, ships in there, but now it's actually canon. It's like not just Star Trek Online ships, but they're actually canon now. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that just elevated our book just that much more, just by happy circumstance. So I'm really grateful for that partnership with Thomas and STO and Cryptic and everybody, especially the artwork. I mean, the Discovery book looks so good. I mean, the layout team did a great job just with the design, the look and feel, and then just to be able to put that great ship art in there as well. Really just elevated the overall product, and we were able to carry that into Utopia Planitia as well, which I'm grateful for. Thomas mentioned Tobias did the standard cover, which I think looks great, and then Stephanie, one of our internal graphic designers, and at Modiphius, she worked on the 2 collector edition covers.
The collector editions are beautiful.
Yeah, they look really nice.
And I can't wait to see the physical version compared to the PDF.
Definitely.
But you got so you got the Pathfinder up. So that's one of the
that's Pathfinder.
Yeah, why don't you talk a little about the Pathfinder, Odyssey, and a Gagarin, and a handful of others. Thomas, why don't you just talk a little bit about these and some of the stories behind them that you chose to drop in?
Yeah, so I mean, the Pathfinder is a special ship to me because that's actually the first Federation starship that I personally designed for Star Trek Online and modeled. And that was back in 2014, I think. And so it's been in the game that whole time. And then actually, a few years ago, we actually ran a live stream, the Star Trek Adventures game with Star Trek Online developers, and we used the Pathfinder as our ship. Right. So even though the Pathfinder did not appear in Picard, I really wanted it to be in the book because of that special connection that it had to Star Trek Adventures and to me personally. So somebody mentioned in chat that it looked like an iteration on the Intrepid class. That's absolutely correct. The Pathfinder is a what I call a 6th generation Starfleet ship, and that just sort of means the STO style of ship. And so there's a Pathfinder. There's another special ship from Star Trek Online that has a great Star Trek Adventures connection, which is the USS Ross, which was also appears in Star Trek Picard. And I designed the Ross for a group of Star Trek Adventure players known as Streampunks. And they had a couple shows. They had a Shield of Tomorrow and most recently Clear Skies. And the Ross was sort of the hero ship of Clear Skies, and we designed it as an heir to the Galaxy class. So it has combination elements from the Galaxy class and the Sovereign class. Like if they had a baby, that's what the Ross is, and it looks great in Picard as that era. 2380s, 2390s. Era of ship, and so it was really thrilling to see it get canonized for them, and certainly include it in the book.
Yeah, that must be an amazing thing. Just think, like something that kind of came about, like you said, because of this stream game, and then it's like, oh, there it goes, flying across the screen. It's
right.
It's so bizarre, isn't it? But how about you, Aaron? Anything any ships particularly that stick out to you as worthy of mention that you're like, I'm so glad that's in this book?
Yeah, there's a couple. I'd say I'm really happy that the Archer class finally made it in. It's one of my favorites from the books. I absolutely adore how small it is, how personal it is, how few of crew it is, but it's still important. It's a fast scout. I love its style, that kind of TOS style. Absolutely adore it. I wanted to make sure. Well, I've actually been trying to get it in since the command book, I think. Right. And for rights reasons, it was not able to get in, and that's okay. I absolutely adore that. But like the other two ships are actually like not starships. I'm just really glad they got in.
Okay.
And that's the space shuttle and the International Space Station.
Right.
The reason why I want those in there is because, hey, you know, it gives the game masters and players ideas for what a very early spacefaring society might be able to have in orbit. But it also allows me to tell, well, allowed me to tell a little bit of a story about an era of Star Trek that we don't really know a ton about. You know, the eugenics war era, post-eugenics war, pre-World War III society, where Earth does have a space, I don't know, it has a presence in space, because I mean when Khan left Earth, there's interplanetary spacecraft tooling around, but what does that mean? And I really like the little tweaks to history that I was able to make to set them off from what our world's space shuttle and International Space Station are.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see just by looking here, it's one of those things that hit me when I first got the PDF. I was like, it's like page 93 before you hit a space frame. It's like the context is so amazing. It's one of the things I was like, oh no, I can actually read this book. This is going to be fantastic. So I was really, really excited to get this. I'm like Jim said, I'm looking forward to the special editions arriving as well.
But I'll be honest, I love the fact that there's all these spaceships in there. And, you know, STO and canon does not matter. I'm happy they're all in here because as fans, we all want more. So
exactly. Do you think that's a kind of? Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. You go.
No, I was just gonna say, I was thinking about which one's my favorite, and it's like, well, I don't really have a favorite. I'm just glad that they're all in here. And what one of the primary design intentions I had in this book when I did the initial like outline for the book, and I was putting all the design parameters, like number one on my must-have wish list for this book was to make sure that every space frame that we put in the book has a piece of art that goes with it. I want it because I've heard well-intentioned complaints from fans from day one of this game, where we included a lot of space frames in like the command book and other books, and we just didn't have the room or the budget to include a picture of all of them. And it's like I knew in the back of my mind, like of course, you know, everybody can go to the internet and find a picture of the ship. It's not that, you know, it's not hard, but all the ships that we've been using, there is a picture of them out there somewhere in the great Ethernet, right? The great internet. But for this book, like I knew this was going to be a book that would have a lot of crossover appeal to casual fans and to STO fans and to other fans who may not be that familiar with the game. And I was like, we've got to find a way to make sure that every single ship in here, every space frame at least, not the shuttlecraft necessarily, but every space frame needs to have a picture. And that was one of the biggest challenges that I ran into. Is like, I mean, fortunately we had Thomas and his connects and the connects that we already had with folks at Paramount and CBS Studios, et cetera, et cetera. So I had a lot of art that I could get up my hands on, but there were a couple pieces that were like, I can't find art. If I can't find art, I'm going to cut it, because as much as I'd want that space frame in the book, if I don't have art, I'm just not going to do it. And I think, you know, the Archer that you showed earlier, that was one of our very, very last acquisitions. We got that at like really like the 11 and a half hour, and Bill Krause, Thomas introduced me to Bill Krause, and he just happened to have a render on hand. And he was able to, you know, spend a half a day tweaking it and revising it, and we got it through approvals super fast. I was really grateful for the approvals team at Paramount to turn it around fast, and we literally just dropped it right into the layout and went on with it. But so I am really proud of the fact that we were, like, the entire team was able to pull together all the resources that we have on hand to make sure that every single ship had a piece of art. So now fans, you know, can read the book, look at it, and you don't have to go to the internet to go find a picture of it. I mean, sure, there's plenty of great art out there already. I mean, there's some amazing professionals and fans who are putting together incredible renders on all the starships in the book, but also all the other like all the secondary canon, third level canon, all the other stuff. I mean, there's so many space frames out there now. It's just amazing how creative folks are. So I'm really proud of that.
There was another bit of a last minute art replacement too. If you want to talk about the Odyssey for a second, that's on page 203.
Man, you guys are on this. Right, there we go. 2 or 3. There we go. There's the Odyssey. And this was a last-minute art replacement.
Yeah, well, because the model that I originally gave Jim, the renders I originally gave Jim were from 2016. That was the last time we touched the model. The Odyssey originally was put in the game in like 2012, I believe, and so like 10 years old. And then I updated it back in 2016. But even then, that's now 6 years ago. And the Odyssey, for people who don't know, is the USS Enterprise F in Star Trek Online. So that's that's our kind of torchbearer Enterprise class. And so it was really important to me that when we, this is we can always improve a video game by sending a patch, and Star Trek Online is an always online game, so people have to patch it if they want to play to get the latest version and update the art and everything. Once people buy a book, and you guys know this more than anybody, like that's the book, that's the thing that they have forever, right? And so I decided to kind of put my nose to the grindstone a little bit, and kind of in 3 weeks I busted out that's a brand new model of the Odyssey. Wow. It's not even in the game yet, but it's totally rebuilt, top to bottom, new material, new windows, like everything.
Wow.
It's still kind of, the design's been updated, so I'm really excited for players to see it in more detail, which they will in the future. We'll get it in the game eventually, but I wanted to bring it up because I just wanted to emphasize how special a thing like this is for me, to see some of my art featured in a licensed Star Trek book. I've been looking at books like this. I have like 3 copies of the Next Gen Technical Manual, right? Like, I've been reading books like this since I was a kid, and to contribute to one is very, very special. And I wanted to make sure that Star Trek Online's presence, and especially for our version of the Enterprise, that it looked at the absolute best that it could. So I just wanted to bring that up as an anecdote too.
It's a really good point. And I think it's kind of you raised that interesting point about, once it's in a book, it's kind of done. I think that's kind of one of the silver linings about this book not being done right at the start, is just the weight of stuff that can be brought to bear. Because there's always going to be like that horrible moment where you just go, where you watch a screen and you think, that's not in the book. We should have had that one, and it's going to happen. But it's just nice to have such a remit of stuff that spans all the way from TOS up to SEA Online. I have to ask, Jim, I noticed this, and this is the sort of thing where I look at it and people will go, you've got too much time in your hands. The art direction on this book, okay, so I'm going to go to, say, page... You probably know what page it is, but I don't. Where are we? Let's have a look. Okay, right. So here we are. We're at the start of the space frames, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I can't point because we're on the internet and that doesn't work. But if you can see, like on the far left and the far right, there's a yellow dot and a blue dot and a red dot and a blue dot. And the very far margins, right? Is it designed to be a flick book so that when you speed through them, the dots bounce up and down like they would do on the actual readout displays? Because I saw that and I was like, those dots are bouncing like they do on the screen.
Oh, wow.
Is that done on purpose? Is it a flick book?
Yeah, and that wasn't from me. That was actually from Lee. Lee Woozy is the one who was our graphic designer for this book.
That's so good.
And, he added those in during the development of the layout, and I knew what he was going for right away when I saw them, page by page.
Yeah.
I can't wait till I actually get the physical book so I can actually flip the pages.
Yeah.
But one question I had for him was, like, in some cases those dots go up out of sight and then they come back into sight, right? And I was like, and sometimes they overlap. And I just, I had a couple of questions for him to say, was that intentional, like that they overlap and that they sometimes disappear? And he said, yeah, totally. When you flip through the book, it's like looking at a computer screen. Yeah. They'll be moving and active, and you'll see them come and go.
It was so good. I was preparing for this, scrolling through the PDF, and I was like, that ain't done by chance. Someone's a genius and deserves a shout out.
It was 100% intentional. Yeah. Lee is a huge Star Trek fan, and I am confident that there are details in the book that he dropped in there just for the love of it that I probably missed, just because we were in such a white rush to get this thing done. But there are some great little details. Like, I love the fact, and this is partly me bugging him in the middle of the night, because I work on this stuff in the middle of the night, of course, with the layout. Because like my initial thought, I was working with him, and I was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool? Because like all the space frames have their era-specific arrowhead next to the name of the class in the bar on the left hand page. And I was like, initially those were all the same. They were all the movie era arrowhead. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could change those to the era-specific arrowheads? And it was like, okay, let's do that. Yeah. But then what he did is he took it to the next level. And so not only is it in the header, but he also put it as like a watermark in the middle of the spread behind the ship, the text. And I was like, oh, wow. And I think it was like 2 or 3 iterations before I noticed that. And I was like, oh, hey, Lee, you also put this like watermark behind the ship in the text. And I was like, that's a really cool touch. I mean, it's really subtle, but it really pops out, at least on the screen. And I tell you, I just can't wait to get that book in hand just to see what it looks like in print, because it's just going to be a whole different experience.
So,
but hopefully, it's all the details that I really appreciate, and like the end papers. We did some cool stuff with the end papers, putting all the ships in there.
Let me show those out.
There's some other eye candy in the book that I know people will appreciate, especially if you spend some time staring at it. Anyway, I don't want to go into
no. That's what we're here for. It's if we can't geek out about spaceships, then I'm in the wrong job, because that's part of the deal.
Sure.
When I got the job at Modiphius, I was like, so you're doing Star Trek, are you? Tell me more. But it's worth pointing out, people have said, where do I get the PDF? The PDF is currently available when you pre-order this book. So if you go to modiphius.net or modiphius.us and you pre-order Utopia Planitia, you get the PDF. When the full book is released physically, the PDF will be available separately. But this is like currently a little pre-order sweet treat for those of you who do that sort of thing. I was looking at this, and it reminded me in the best way possible of when I was getting into RPGs as a kid, and being the thing that really drew me in was the monster manual, and I would pick that up and I would look through that, and it was just so. I was like, I wanted to see all these things in action and sort of and bring them into my stories, and I just think this has the potential to be that plus more, because it's like, I think if you pop this in front of someone who's like a Star Trek fan and hasn't roleplayed before, this is going to be like better than any starter set to get people. I would look at this and I'd be like, oh my god, I remember that ship. I immediately looked through it and I was like, where's the Nebula class? Because that's my favourite one, and it's like, brilliant. It's in there and you go to that page. It's did you do any kind of conscious presenting as like a kind of like an introductory book almost, or as a coffee table thing in a way, because it feels very sumptuous, like you just said?
Yeah, that was absolutely 100% intentional. When I grew up on the Franz Joseph technical manual, right? The way back, TOS era, the black cover and all the great line art that is in there for all the different starship classes that they imagined would exist, even though we didn't see them on screen. They extrapolated it, and it makes sense that there's a tug version and there's a different version, and so on and so forth. And so I grew up on the Franz Joseph stuff, and I think if you look at the cover of especially the original series collector's edition, we tried to echo the fonts and the layout and just the kind of the design feel to make it look kind of like a technical manual. And I think we even put like historical document on the front cover just to give it that kind of feel. So I grew up with the Franz Joseph book, and then when the FASA RPG came out, it was this early '80s, I guess. They had these great series of starship recognition manuals. They were like 32-page, little flimsy paperback magazine-like things. And there was one for the Federation, one for the Romulans, and one for the Klingons. And like I was working at Walden Books at the time, and we sold some of the stuff in the store, right? And I would pour through those on my lunch break in the stock room, because it was just, the spaceships are so important to Star Trek. I mean, literally, they're another character on the show, and they're so important to the crew, and they're so important to the franchise that I knew that for this book we had to make it something special, so that a casual fan could pick it up and look at it, read a little bit about the history of Starfleet, read a little bit about why the starship is so important to a crew and to a group of players, assuming you play the game. And then, I really encouraged Aaron to kind of codify the system that he's been using to build space frames, because, we've been doing this for 6 years now, and it's like, okay, I know we can't fit everything in the book. Let's give everybody an opportunity to take like a rule set, or not necessarily a rule set, but like the design intentions and parameters about how to build space frames. Let's revise everything and then go forward with that system, so that if there's a cool space frame that you see in a a comic book or a video game or a novel or all the hundreds of thousands of different Star Trek stuff that's been out there for the last 56 years. If there's a space frame that you think is really cool and you don't see it in the game, then build it yourself. Like we gave you all the tools right there in the book, and we were also intentional. Like the writing team, Al Spader and Michael Dismuke and John Kennedy and Aaron and Thomas. We were really, really intentional about trying to pull in as much of the Starship mechanics crunch that's been in the game for 6 years and pull it all into one book. So all the talents, all the space bits, all the weapons, all that stuff, we've put it all into one book for easy reference, so that you don't have to have a stack of books on your table while you're trying to build your space frame. It's all right there in the Utopia book. So hopefully, I think we caught it all. There was a couple of things that I think we missed, but there's just so much mechanics, and I can tell you, I don't know about Aaron, but like I'm tired of looking at stat blocks because we looked at a lot of stuff a long time on this book.
Yeah,
So,
we went through it a few times and we still had mistakes that snuck through. And then after the PDF got released, we were like, fans were like, hey, there's something wrong here. Oh, I can't believe I missed that. You start getting that tunnel vision when you're looking at numbers for so long.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had multiple editors and proofreaders and Aaron looking at this multiple times over the course of 8 months or whatever. And stuff still slips through, and that's just the nature of publishing. But I think we caught all the key stuff, right? All the important stuff. And I'm grateful to the fans too, because a lot of the fans were really, really proactive and were able to send in comments like within the first couple of days of the PDF coming out. To the extent that I was like, you know what, we can wait a couple of days before we send this to the printer and do one last pass through it, and do one last beauty pass through it, and we were lucky that we had that time, and that I was able to convince Modiphius leadership to give it a couple of days to wait, because we knew this was going to be a special book, and we knew that this was probably, I mean, honestly, in 6 years, this is, I think, the first book that's really going to have broader appeal to not just Star Trek Adventures gamers, but STO and casual fans. Because the casual fans should be able to look at this in a bookstore or a game store or wherever you find it and say, "Oh, it's cool looking starships and Star Trek stuff." Check it out. But going back to something you said earlier, Steve, where you said you opened it up and you weren't expecting some of the stuff that was in it beyond just starships. I wanted to make sure that people had an opportunity to get more stuff than just starships, because we could have certainly filled 200 pages with just space frames, but then it's a catalog. it's not as interesting of a supplement. So hopefully this the content in here ties into the player guide and the game master guide that we did earlier, and just gives a lot more stuff for players and game masters to use in a game environment, because that's what you need for a role-playing game. You need all this depth of detail, and hopefully just a lot of cool new tools that people can make use of.
Speaking of, I see some there was a comment in chat. It's like asking. Okay, we're detailing the space frames. What about space stations? What can we talk about and or show? I see Aaron nodding there. Yes, we can do that. It's like what should we be mentioning about space stations?
You can build space stations.
Excellent.
Here, and there's lots of stats about certain space stations that we see in the show.
Excellent.
Aaron, I encouraged Aaron. So I said, as long as we're doing a construction kit for space frames, I mean, why not add small craft and space stations too? Because it's all the same system. It's all the same, not all the same, but the talents, the traits, the weapons. It's all right there. It's already in the book. So let's add that too. And that was, in my opinion, it was an easy add. Like, Aaron, you'll have to tell me how hard it was to adapt that system to create small craft and space stations. But I'm going to guess it's not that hard. But you tell me.
Yeah, it really wasn't that hard. It was more about shuttles are just smaller, so they don't have as many departments. Like, you just take away the stats on it for departments, and then they have fewer systems just because they're smaller. And then space stations are the exact opposite. They're huge, so they have more than enough volume and internal volume to fit in personnel systems, anything you want. It can be in there. So I mean, obviously, a scale 6 space station is probably going to have better stats than some starships that are that scale, just because they don't have to dedicate as much internal room to their warp drive, because they're not really going to move unless they have like a mobile space dock, mobile dry dock system installed, which is possible. You can do that in this as well. So,
I thought this is an interesting page, but not only to highlight what you were saying earlier about the International Space Station being in here, but also Thomas, the shot of the Enterprise, which you talk about in your intro to the book. Which is it's one of those scenes where I think, you know, it's easy to make jokes about it, but it is actually pretty damn good. I haven't seen the 4K version yet. Has anyone seen the restoration? Is it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's
Oh,
really
excellent.
nice. And in fact, I think they added. I mentioned, so I was honored that Jim asked me to write the foreword to this book, and I was really happy to do it. And I described that shot where in the motion picture where, you know, Scotty and Kirk are in the travel pod and they go and they kind of circle around the Enterprise, and Kirk gets to look at the Reef Enterprise for the first time.
Yeah.
And you can see him like literally, you know, he's like falling in love with the ship all over again, right? And there's a shot where you see Kirk's face. And then I think in the director's cut or in the 4K, I don't know if it was in the director's cut or the 4K version,
Right.
but they superimpose the reflection of the Enterprise in, you know, just above Kirk's face, so that you sort of see them together, and it's a lot more symbolic.
Right.
Because I think in the original version of the movie they didn't have that. It was just Kirk's face. But seeing it like the object of his affection, you know, contrasted to his expression of like almost longing, you know, is really powerful and speaks to the Enterprise as a character. The Enterprise
Yeah.
and its relationship to Kirk, you know, is something really special. And I think that sort of defined why starships are so important to Star Trek through the whole history of the franchise. That set the tone of, you know, she's a lady, you know, she's got the right name, you know, if you treat her right, she'll always bring you home, right?
Yeah.
Bones says that at the beginning of Encounter at Farpoint. And then Kirk has his own and the naked time, Kirk bemoans the fact that he can't have a real relationship because he's in love with the Enterprise and his responsibility as the Enterprise, and she just takes and takes and takes. You know, talking about her as his almost his wife or something, you know, and so that sort of ships as character is something that's really been beaten into me. And before I was the associate art director on Stowe, I was the ship lead, and so that was I did a lot of work to make sure that everybody who worked on SDO Starships had that mentality of, you know, we're not just like recreating a model from a TV show, right? We're making characters too. These are as important to people as, you know, their bridge officers or their captain. Their ships are a really important part of that story, and that's what this book is all about.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And like just as people have been saying in chat, I see there's a few people subscribing at the moment. Thank you very much. The fact, you know, that it leans so heavily into, and rightly so, into the character of the ship. I think there's a reason when, you know, we were all growing up, you know, you knew it that was the Enterprise, and, you know, there were, you know, obviously there are other films which begin with the word star, which also do that quite successfully. You know, they have spaceships and they're known by name, and there wasn't that other connection in other things. You know, you didn't get, like, apart from maybe showing my age a bit, Battlestar Galactica. You know, you know, it's that thing, but it's just I think it's glorious to sort of finally give these beautiful tall ships a lovely collection that emphasizes that.
We wanted to really press that the ship is a character thing with the notable starships. You know, here's another starship that you've never heard about, or maybe it is a part of canon, and then telling a little bit of a story to give game masters and players and like little story nuggets or ideas of where to take their own adventures, or just the fact that, hey, these starships are all out there, they're all having these adventures, they all have their own personalities or quirks.
It's absolutely fantastic.
I want to add too, related. I've been careful not to look too closely at the chat because I don't want to get distracted by what you all are talking about. I want to be, you know, active listening and stuff. But I do want to add that, like, if you're running a Klingon game, you're running a Romulan game, or some other species game instead of Starfleet, you can still use this book. I think, Aaron, I want you to speak to this a little bit about the the starship construction system that's in the book. I mean, the weapons tables are comprehensive for everything that's in Star Trek up to the 25th century. I don't know that we went into a lot of detail on the Borg specifically, but the Delta Quadrant sourcebook has that. Not to be plugging it, but I'm just saying, like, if you pair up the Delta Quadrant book with the Starships book, you're good to go to create however many amazingly strangely shaped Borg vessels that you want to come up with is fine. But I think if you're running a Klingon game or you're running a Romulan game or a Cardassian, whatever, you should be able to use the construction system in this book to create your own new versions of those ships without having to wait for an alien starships book that frankly probably won't happen just by virtue of the fact that Star Trek is Starfleet focused, right? And to try to come up with a good expectation of sales, because frankly we're not in a capitalist free society, right? So we gotta make it work. Hey buddy,
exactly. But
the time is running. So anyway, so Aaron, can you talk a little bit just like thinking outside the box? If you were to take this book and use it for a non-Federation game, what do you get?
Yeah, you absolutely can. There's specific rules in there for designing your ships that are Klingon or Romulan. And the way that the ship creation system is set up is that you can make up your own new species, your own new polity, and say, well, you know what, I think their starships are 20 years less advanced than Starfleet. Well, then you already have the stats that you should be making your starships with. They're 20 years less, so they would have 2 less system points.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing with more advanced species. It doesn't matter. Or you can just say, hey, look, I'm going to have a bump on this species to their propulsion because they've really gone hard onto their propulsion systems. All of that is no problem. You can even do pre-Federation starships, like pre-Earth Romulan War starships. Hey, if you want to make a starship from the 17th century that's a Vulcan ship, you absolutely can, using the rules that are in this book. It's as comprehensive as I could make it without going into lots of functions or things like that. But yeah, it's inclusive all the way up through, let's say, the 28th century-ish, and then you would have to have the Discovery Season 3 PDF pack to get what happens after that.
Stuff that's only technically just been screened, so
but I've already figured out how to deal with that. So it's kind of taken into context. It's taken into account. Exactly. But I think I saw somebody. Oh, never mind. Just stop.
No, exactly. No, that's the problem, isn't it? And I was like, when we were putting together the running order for ModCon, we were just like, this is the one where we can just chat, really, isn't it? Because this is the one we're going to be able to. I think though we probably should start drawing it to a close. So what I would like to say is just if anyone has any final thoughts about this, or like kind of, what anything they'd like to say to round off our space frames and space stations conversation, now's the time.
I would say this is a love letter from everyone on the team. That this book really truly is a love letter from everyone on the team. I can say specifically for myself, it truly is. I've been a spaceship person since I was a little kid. Literally my first memory ever is being in the back seat of a car at a drive-in theater watching Star Trek the Motion Picture with my parents. That is literally my first memory, and seeing Enterprise in dry dock. And that stuck with me. So yes, I've put a lot of emotion and love into this.
Cool.
Thomas, any closing thoughts?
I'm just happy to be here, like like Rutherford. I been playing tabletop games for a long time. Like I said, played Star Trek Adventures some years ago, and I've been contributing art to STA to some degree since the Delta Quadrant book or the Beta Quadrant book. And in the Beta Quadrant book, it was like, here are some Gorn ships and here are some Zincathi ships or something. That was the Alpha Quadrant book. But yeah, but it was a very kind of limited scope. So I'm just really excited and grateful that we've gotten to collaborate more and more together and kind of scratch each other's backs like this. And I'm looking forward to more. It'd be really fun to do like an STO source book someday. Who knows? But yeah, it's been a blast, and I'm certainly really proud of the book, and I'm really thankful to be just part of this big Star Trek family and just have so much fun in the universe that we all love.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Jim,
Yeah,
how about yourself?
wrap it up. Yeah, I'll just wrap it up by saying I am grateful for everybody on the team who are willing to come with me on these books, book after book after book, and I tell you, they make them better and better every time we do a new book. It just gets better and better. Like the manuscripts I get are just so good, and Aaron and Thomas put so much great material into their ship write-ups. Like every single write-up. Like I always, when I was in the middle of editing the book, like I would catch myself stopping in the middle of the edit, imagining what kind of cool campaigns I could run just based on a couple of lines that they would drop into the lore of the ships, because there's just so much material, like line after line. This book is like 256 pages, but it's just packed full of stuff, page after page after page. If you're a game master or a player and this book doesn't spark your imagination, we've done something horrifically wrong, because there's so much great content in here.
I don't think that's possible.
Truly a love letter to the fans and to Star Trek and to everybody. Like so many people over 56 years who've been involved in starships and design. All the different artists, just not just painters and stuff, but like graphic artists, designers, computer generated folks, everything. We love all of you and all the work that you do, and I hope you recognize that love in this book, because it's just seeping out of it. And I like all the fans, I cannot wait to see what this looks like in print, because I've been staring at a Word document or a PDF now for a year, and because I'm in the United States and Modiphius is in the UK, I don't normally get to see the print proofs. So what I end up seeing is the print version, like when I actually get my comp copy or in hand. So I don't know what the actual end result's going to look like. I think it's going to be amazing, especially with the prismatic foil that we picked for the covers, for the different covers. I'm just really excited to see what that looks like against the leatherette, right? Because I just don't know, but I hope it's going to be amazing. But, I want to thank all the fans, because without the fan base of this game and of Star Trek in general, but especially of the game, we could not possibly have done this book. We wouldn't have gone 6 years without the fans. The fans are so supportive of each other and so passionate that I can't thank you enough for everything that you do. And we'll be talking more about these books. I think STO and Modiphius are partnering up on a special event coming up soon. I don't think we're ready to announce the details yet, but there is going to be more cool stuff to talk about. And, there's plenty of other podcasts and conversations about Utopia Planitia as we gear up to the launch of it here in October-ish, November-ish, however fast the printer can print it. But that covers it for me. I'll stop talking because I know we got one more panel to get to for ModCon. So thank you, Steve, for emceeing this.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you to all of you for coming. It's it's one of those ones where you put together a lineup and you think, this is the guilty pleasure on it. Getting to just like sit around and chat things that are important to me and nerdy. I think when you've all said that the book is a love letter, and I think that is patently obvious when you get to read it. I think the appreciation of what makes the aesthetic of Star Trek spaceships, Federation spaceships, cool is writ large in it, and it's lovely. So I'm really looking forward to the hard copy. What we'll do now is we are going to take a little... I've said this already now, I've said this 3 times. We're going to take a 10-minute break, which almost always becomes a 15 to 20-minute break, as I discover yet another technical snafu that I have to deal with, thanks to updating... I'm going to blame OBS. I updated it 2 days ago. Don't know why I did that. That was terrible. But yeah, we're going to go away and we'll be back with Dune Adventures in the Imperium. We're going to be talking about Houses of the Landsraad, which is going to be the next book after Masters of Dune. And as I'm sure you can guess on the title, it details all of the houses of the Landsraad. But otherwise, please say thank you once again to Jim, Aaron, and Thomas for coming and joining us. It is a pleasure, and I hope our paths cross again very soon.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Live long and prosper, everybody.
Live long and prosper. Catch you guys soon. See you in 10 minutes. Bye.